What is going on, boys? Long time video in the making. Staples for Master Duel. Master Duel has now been announced to officially come out on mobile. By the time you see this video, it's probably already out on mobile, so hey, there we go. Let's get into it. These cards are not all of the staples in the game, but these are the ones that I have personally found to be the most useful. So while you will see other staples that are not included on here, these are the ones that I have found to be most useful, and we're kind of going to talk about when to use them, how to use them, and if you want to use them for your deck. Now, if you know of any other staples, go ahead, leave a comment down below. I heavily recommend anyone watching this video to also read the comments, because I'm sure people will have other staples and uses for them as well. This game works a little different than Duel Links. In Duel Links, you generally wanted to go after your staples first because of the cost of everything. You got a lot of free gems, but you had to gamble for a lot of things, so it was always easier to get all the staples in the game and then turn around and buy cheap decks as they came out to put those staples into. And Master Duel is a little different. Master Duel, because we have a more limited economy until they add more gems to the game, or if they add more gems to the game, it's kind of better to buy whatever deck you're looking for. But a lot of Tier 1 decks, Tier 2 decks share a lot of these staple cards. So if you buy them, you're already sharing them, you're already taking a huge chunk of cost out of those other decks. So it's good to know what those cards could potentially be. And I figured, why not start with the spell cards? Here we go. Some UR spell cards that are very good. Forbidden Droplet. This is probably one of my most favorite right now. Definitely need to grab this card. Basically, it's quick play. It also halves attack points, so you can use it very, very late all the way into the damage step. Very, very clutch for that purpose. It basically lets you send as many cards on the field or in the hand that you have, and then your opponent cannot respond with those card effects. So if you send a monster, a spell, and a trap, your opponent essentially can't respond to this card with any of those cards, which makes it very, very, very powerful. And basically, it halves the monster's attacks up to the number of cards that you send and negates their effects. This is really good, especially when you have decks like Tri-Brigade that have the Fire Formation Tinky. Once that Tinky is on the board and has already searched your monster, you don't really need the 100 attack boost anymore, so you can kind of double up on the usage of Tinky by sending it to the graveyard for Forbidden's effect. So very, very clutch card. Definitely would pick up. I personally have 3 copies of it. Next up, we have Call by the Grave, which is limited to 2. Call by the Grave is really, really good because you can, if it's your turn, you can banish a hand trap. So if your opponent tries to Max C or Ash Blossom you, you can banish those cards and negate their effects because whatever hand trap has to activate has to go to the graveyard before its effect resolves. So you're able to effectively stop that from ever happening at all. The other thing that's really clutch with it is if you set it and it's your opponent's turn and they try to like banish a, try to use a card to banish, or they have Eldritch, they try to use Eldritch effect or something like that, you can then Call by the Grave non-hand trap monsters and negate their effects as well, making it kind of a double whammy. It's never really a dead card, which is, in Yu-Gi-Oh, there's so many graveyard-based strategies that it's just always useful for you. Crossout Designator, another really, really amazing negate card. Basically, you banish one card from your deck, and then whatever that card is, its effect cannot be used. So let's say I'm about to get Nibiru'd and I have this card. I can activate this, send a Nibiru from my deck, and my opponent can no longer Nibiru me. Ash Blossom, whatever other card, Lightning Storm, whatever the card is, I can use this, send that card away, and my opponent can't activate that card anymore, making it counter pretty much a lot of things in the game, as long as you also are playing those cards. So really, really good if you hit them on staples, right? So that's the key, because there's a lot of these common staples found in multiple decks. As long as you have those common staples as well, boom, they're out of here. Lightning Storm. Now, Lightning Storm's an interesting one, to say the least. Lightning Storm, if you have no face-up cards, you can choose to either destroy all face-up monsters your opponent controls, or all all monsters, not just face-up, all monsters, and then or all spell and trap cards if you control no face-up cards. So while this card can be dead if you end up, having nothing on your board, it is very strong if, like, you're going second and your opponent is set up, right? Or if your opponent's playing Eldritch or something like that. This can really force massive cards out from them. So really, really, really powerful. Love to see it. Triple Tactics Talent. Now, this is an interesting card. Basically, if your opponent hand traps you, if they use a monster effect and it's your turn, then you can choose a bunch of different effects that can really help you win the duel, from drawing 2 cards or ripping a card out of your opponent's hand. This card, I think, has not seen as much use, but potentially could see more usage in the future as the meta develops. Especially in modern TCG, I believe, outside of the OCG meta, this card sees a lot of play. But basically, the only thing that has to happen is your opponent needs to activate a monster effect first, and then you can use it on pretty much right afterwards. So you get Ash Blossom, you have Recovery. You can, or if you already have a good hand, you can just rip a card out of your opponent's hand, making it a much more fair fight for you. Next up, we have both Pot of Desires and Pot of Disparity, and the pots they're interesting, right? All the different pots are interesting. Obviously, Desires, it's you banish 10 off the top of your deck and then draw 2. The idea being those are 10 cards you would have never gotten to begin with, so you might as well get rid of them and draw something that you can use right away. And the Disparity, same thing, but from the extra deck, 3 or 6. And then I'm actually confused. I don't remember if it's this one or the other one. There's another one. There's one where you banish 3 or 6, and there's one where you also banish 3 and then excavate 3. Whichever one this ends up being. I personally like Desires more. The excavate one can be good, but usually you only need to excavate 3. You don't necessarily always need to excavate 6. 6 is more like, I'm desperate, I need this excavation to work in order to get somewhere. I think most decks, it just kind of depends. Desires works well for decks that, have like a bunch of, Tri-Brigade. They have a bunch of single combo pieces. They're good to go. Where things like Disparity would be something more like a ritual-based deck, right? Where they don't really care. They care more if their main deck monsters, like their one of Ultimateness or something, gets, sent to the banish pile or something like that. So keep that in mind. And then Twin Twisters is a really, really good card to pick up here. You could also get Harpy's Featherstorm, but a lot of people are preferring the Twin Twisters because getting that discard is actually really nice. And most of the time, you only need to pop 2 set trap cards for Eldritch and whatnot. It's just a very good quick play spell. It can do it on your opponent's turn before they activate. Very, very, very clutch for that back row removal. It's one of the more preferred methods right now. Next up, we have hand traps. Oh, baby, here, let's talk about them. Nibiru. Against a lot of decks, Nibiru is like an FTK. Basically, once your opponent summons up to 5 monsters, you can activate it anytime after that in the main phase, and then you blow up the entire board. Everything gets destroyed. You summon a Nibiru token on their board, and you summon Nibiru on your side of the board. And that's pretty much it. This can stop a lot of decks dead in their tracks that are popping off, comboing off hard on you. And can pretty much be just a straight up game win against a lot of decks. Not a lot of decks can play through. A lot of decks will have to try and negate this from ever happening to be. Now let's talk about Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom, probably one of them. If there were statistics, I bet you Ash Blossom is just one of the most used hand traps in the game right now. It just does so much good stuff, right? Whenever your opponent tries to search or summon from the deck or anything like that, you just say no. Stop. It also counters one of the best hand traps in the game, if not the best hand trap in the game right now, Max C. Woo! Max C, basically, it's interesting, right? Because if you use it right, if you chain it to a special summon, you get a guaranteed at least 1 draw to replace it. So there isn't really any downside to using it, unless you top deck another Max C, which would be hilarious at that point. And then your opponent has to make a decision. Do I just, go skip my turn? Do I try to lethal this turn? Do I try to make up some sort of board that can kind of compete with this? At least like 1 negate or something? And no matter what they choose, it's always a negative for the opponent if they are unable to stop this. That's why Ash Blossom is so good. You stop the Max C. Designator is really good. You stop the Max C. It's just the highest impact hand trap we have. Next up, Effect Veiler. Oh man, Effect Veiler is a little bit interesting. I've actually, since we've made these graphics, I've seen it kind of drop off a little bit, but basically during your opponent's turn, whenever you want, you discard this, boom, you negate a monster effect on the board on your opponent's side of the board. That's pretty much the end all be all of it. It's also a tuner if you ever, it's never really a brick because you can then use it for tuning plays, but we haven't really seen that happen too much so far. I actually like Infinite Impermanence more. Infinite Impermanence, when you have no cards and it's, you know, your opponent's turn, or not even your opponent's turn, your turn, as long as you have no cards, you can activate it from the hand, immediate monster negation. And then if you do have to set it and then use it, you actually get a really cool effect of being able to negate whatever spells are in that column, which doesn't happen too much, but sometimes people forget, and then boom, you get a free negate. Or if someone set something there beforehand, you can just go ahead and stop them from ever using that. Next up, we have the Psy-Frame Gamma and Driver combo. And this hand trap's really interesting because it's a negate, but it also destroys. Not a lot of these hand traps that negate monster effects will also destroy, and this one will. If you're able to do it on your turn, you get even more value because then you get to use it as a synchro material to go to Psy-Frame Omega or the Psy-Frame Link monster. Both very powerful effects to use. But even on its own, just negating like a powerful creature on your opponent's turn and destroying it, if you destroy a chokehold level monster, that may just be the game for you. So something to keep in mind with the Psy-Frame. I really love playing the Psy-Frames, even if they can be a little bricky from time to time. I still think it's pretty good. Next up, we've got the trap cards. Oh, baby, here we go. Solemn Strike, very, very powerful trap card because it will let you pay 1,500 to negate a monster effect, which is the most used or most negated effect in the game. Very, very strong. Imperial Order. You just say no to all spells. You know, it only costs 700. So, again, very powerful. Solemn Judgment. You can pay half your life points, spell trap, negate them. A summon of a monster, negate it. Negating summons is very rare. And when you can get them, it's very, very powerful. So just say no to your opponent. Solemn Warning, very, very powerful as well. Again, same cost, or 2,000 for the spell trap variant instead. And then Vanity's Emptiness, which is actually legal in this game at a limit 1 to stop your opponent from just special summoning outright. And if you're using certain decks, that, you know, zombie decks and whatnot, if something's sent from the field to the graveyard, you can actually take that restriction away during your turn. So very, very, very powerful effect. There's the other Pot of Extravagance. There you go. Not really my so favorite one. I think that got messed up in the graphic there. It should have been under spells, but there it is. There it is for you guys. And then Skill Drain, of course. You pay 1,000. All monster effects are then turned off. No more skill drains. So very powerful, especially if you play things like Eldridge or True Draco, things that don't need their monster effects. You can just stop your opponent. I think Prank Kids too. We saw a lot of Prank Kids in the tournament play around this card. And then low rarity free cards. I think we made a whole video on this before, but just to go over them again. Monster Reborn, Reborn a Monster, Raigeki, Destroy Your Opponent's Monster, Reinforcements of the Army, Mystical Space Typhoon, and Torrential Tribute. These are all free cards that are extremely powerful, and can give you, I mean, come on, you get them for free, right? Like, free Raigeki is very good. You can hit platinum with free Raigeki. Torrential Tribute is a very underrated card. Just basically blowing up everything on the board once your opponent summons anything. It can be very, very devastating. So we had a whole video on that. If you want more in-depth analysis on those cards, check that out. And that is pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, these are not all the staples in the game, but definitely go, if you have any other staples that you've been using, put them down in the comments below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and until the next one, take it easy, boys.